Alright, I'm going to use Keating's bathtub of superannuation to try and explain the way I've seen this all. I've always seen it as, yeah, you got your bathtub with your money in it, but when you need to go access that, you're given like a bucket full of holes or like a cup full of holes. Meanwhile, the managers of the funds are sitting there with siphon pumps. Yeah? Nah? Alright, now let's get into this clip from ABC.
Retirement savings have been plundered during the COVID crisis, and now the legislated rise in the super rate is in doubt after the government questioned whether businesses could afford it. Nasim Kadem takes a look at whether leaving the super rate at 9.5% will lead to more jobs or pay rises.
Well, did leaving it at 9.5% all the way back to 2015 lead to any rise in wages or jobs? Is that not a long enough time period to possibly gather some data in this area? Perhaps.
Like most people his age, Zach Webster doesn't pay much attention to his super. The university student and fast food worker wants to be able to use some of his super savings for a house deposit.
When you're young and 19, you don't really think about retirement, you're thinking about what you can do with your money.
At first I was like, oh yeah, let's ask someone who was like 14 the last time this was increased. But when I think about it, he has the most to gain out of something like this.
Despite that, he wants the federal government to stick to its legislated promise to gradually increase super from 9.5% to 12% by 2025.
It shouldn't just be outright delayed because we're in a recession. A 3% pay rise would much help people such as myself.
He's not the only one making that call. Former Labor Prime Ministers warn delaying super rises robs workers.
Grand theft Liberal Party style against the working population of Australia.
This is a cruel assault by Morrison on the retirement income of working Australians and using the cover of COVID to try and get away with it.
But it's Australians that have been raiding their super accounts during the pandemic.
Excuse me, ABC. What the fuck was that?
The government has allowed individuals early access to $20,000 of their super. So far, about 3 million Australians have withdrawn about $34 billion. Still, that's a tiny portion of the $3 trillion savings pool. And Liberals say...
This should be good. Liberals say... What do they say?
It's proof people need the money now.
Ha ha ha, no. The party of cuts to job seeker, people have to live in poverty, job keeper goes to your employer, and job maker is another fucking handout.
We know that a rise in the superannuation guarantee comes at a trade-off to wages, it comes at a trade-off to jobs, and we know that, taking money out of people's pockets today, potentially to put away for 40 years, might not necessarily be the right solution for the time.
Ooh, if this lady really doesn't like these superannuation rises because she's worried about money being taken out of people's pockets, or could you imagine when she finds out what they did to penalty rates? Oh golly. And that was just taking people's money out of their pocket just cause yada yada something more jobs. Oh yeah, but wait till she finds out about that. Oh.
Even before the pandemic hit, some economists were calling for the planned increase to be abandoned.
So even before people were allowed to take up to $20,000 out early, they thought it should be abandoned. Alright, yeah, okay.
They say at 9.5%, most Australians will retire comfortably, and those who don't can rely on government support through the aged pension.
Did you hear that, everybody? We'll probably live comfortably on 9.5, and if not, the pension will pick up the rest. But interesting how they never seem to want to tell you that the pension age is increasing. It was 65, no longer 65. They're aiming for 67.
Firms simply have to choose between putting more money into the pockets of their workers or more money into their superannuation funds.
Money back in the pockets of the workers. Wasn't that why we had tax cuts? Isn't that why we are having less tax brackets?
If employers have to spend more to hire any given worker, then just like when prices go up in the supermarket, we would want to buy fewer of those items. The employers would be expected to want to hire fewer of those workers.
And this, I really have no idea what they're trying to do here. They have some guy from some institutions come in and kind of give you the impression that wages are gonna suffer, you're gonna take home less. And then they have a professor from somewhere come in and make you think that the wages are gonna increase somehow, and therefore making employers want to hire less people. They get all these experts in to make it harder to understand what's going on.
But unions argue wage rises have been on pause for years, even while there's been no super increase. They say there's no historical evidence to prove that when super goes up, wages go down, and with super rises, workers win in the long term.
Holy moly, guys, did you hear that? Increases to the rate of which we put money into a retirement fund will benefit the people who do that further down the track, like when they retire.
For a retail worker, that's $4.16 a week, the price of a cup of coffee. But what it means in their retirement savings when those increases over the next couple of years come through is more than $60,000 when they retire.
Maybe it's because I'm in it for the well-being of people and that's my main goal. But this woman is the only one that's made sense to me throughout this entire video put out by ABC. And I think it's because she just cuts straight to the chase and tells you what the benefit for the employee will be.
The debate has also raised questions about whether super funds are gouging their members. Australians pay these funds about $30 billion worth of fees each year. If the super rise goes ahead, they get an even bigger slice of the savings pie.
Whoa, wait a minute. So you're telling me that the guys with the siphon pumps managed to get out the same amount that Australians got out with early access to their super because of a pandemic? They get the same amount out every year. Yeah, well, that is a problem, isn't it? Now, you see, the fact that we're dealing with a increase which they've got in legislation, I assume that you could also maybe do something about the fees and how people are being rorted. Oh, and interesting how the one time they're going to complain about someone on the top probably taking more than their fair share is being used in an argument against an increase for the worker in some way.
Doing so would increase the amount of fees that superannuation funds are going to receive by about $500 million a year by 2025. Now, those fees are far too high, as the Productivity Commission has shown.
Beyond questions about the rate of super, the government will consider tax incentives and how to better engage young people in the system.
Oh, this one almost snuck through, but I got it before the end of editing the video. What do they mean, engage more young people? It's a compulsory thing for when people are employed. Their employer has to pay them super. They get a job, they're involved in the system. What the...
My message as a young person is be more flexible. Let us put our own money in and less tax on it. Less fees.
A retirement review has considered those very issues, but the Treasurer's response has been delayed. It may not be until next year when we find out if our super gets a top-up.
Oh my god, we made it to the end. Now, did you notice that they quickly cut him off as soon as he said fees, like suggesting it like it's something that could be fixed, along with the increase. With that said, we're going to go back through some of the people that spoke through this video, and let's see if you can guess which one I'm going to have to revisit. And no, it's not the reporter that was trying to shame Australians, and no, it's not Homeboy from that institution that's been saying since before COVID that they should scrap this increase. And no, it's not Professor Grocery Employees. Let's listen to what Senator Jane Hume has to say again.
We know that a rise in the superannuation guarantee comes at a trade-off to wages, it comes at a trade-off to jobs, and we know that, taking money out of people's pockets today, potentially to put away for 40 years, might not necessarily be the right solution for the times.
First thing, what do you mean potentially? Just that word really stuck out to me, like where it was and what do you mean potentially? Anyways, to the start of her sentence. She says how this will come at a cost of jobs, which I still need to see the working out, and at a cost to wages, which I'm pretty certain that can be explained by that's how it fucking works. That is the system, okay? My position is now you have to pick one, motherfuckers. Oh, and if an argument is simply stating something and not needing to provide any evidence that supports your claim, then the increases to super will create jobs, because I've given just as much proof as the argument for it costing jobs. And okay, that somehow might not be the right solution for the times, but letting people access their retirement early to get through the pandemic was a good move for the time. And then on top of that, not adding more to people's retirement, which they've taken from early. Yeah, it can't be a good move for the times. Anywho, I was struggling to see why the Liberal government really had it out for this, because having my outside perspective of being a bit about superannuation, but I think I've worked it out. I think I've cracked why they don't really want to help out any super funds or Australian people. It's because they want the banks to take your house. That's what they want. They want reverse mortgages. Okay, I'm just going to read you bits from a couple of articles, one of them being Federal Government to Assess Superannuation Housing Policy After Retirement Income Review. Australians could be encouraged by the federal government to draw down on their superannuation balances and use their equity from their family home to fund their retirement rather than rely on increases in compulsory super contributions. If the superannuation guarantee stayed at 9.5% rather than increasing to 12%, retirees would have a higher income during their working life. The review also suggests that keeping the super guarantee at 9.5% would increase income for most people across their working years by 2%. The review finds age pension provides safety net, complexity of superannuation, and another one, and another recommendation saying make people use their home. But the corporate regulator of ASIC has previously warned against reverse mortgages, where a loan is taken out using the family home as equity with no repayments made until the house is sold or the owner moves out or dies, because many borrowers had a poor understanding of the financial risks involved. While the report doesn't make recommendations, its key observations will play an important role in better informing future public policy and the retirement outcomes delivered to Australians, Mr. Frydenberg said. Superannuation increases face growing opposition from government MPs and economists from September 20. Just two of the key points. A debate is brewing about whether the rise will mean employers refrain from increasing wage. There are calls for the government to reduce more than $30 billion of fees paid to super funds each year and overhaul the system. Yeah, not bad idea. This is that professor. The argument that putting more into super will also raise the wage is nonsensical. At least if you're talking about the wage today, Professor Foster said. I find this hilarious because one of the only people, possibly the only person I've heard say anything along the lines of people's wages increasing has been her.
If employers have to spend more to hire any given worker, then just like when prices go up in the supermarket, we would want to buy fewer of those items. The employers would be expected to want to hire fewer of those workers.
She questioned why the government would raise the cost of employment during the biggest recession Australia has faced since World War II. Like, come on, look at this shit. This isn't me putting them together, that is the ABC article. I am not kidding. This is an economist. Okay. Industry Super Australia Chief Executive Bernie Dean also points out 600,000 Australians already exhausted their retirement savings through the government's early release scheme, the vast majority of them under 35 years old. Without plenishing their savings, this will mean many more people are reliant on the age pension, a bill we will all pay through higher taxes, Mr. Dean says. Alright, and a quick recap of everything. This really wasn't so much about superannuation, more so about picking apart ABC's everything. because it seems like they will get quote unquote experts on to confuse things even more and make you leave with more questions than what you arrived with. Great journalism. Fantastic reporting. And remember, I do not have super, so I'd love to hear what people with super or had super and had to spend it think of all this. That's what the comments are for. Unlike ABC, I have them turned on. And just my theory on why retirees might not draw down on their super fund. Perhaps because they don't really want to predict when they're going to die and budget out their money hoping they won't run out. That might be a part of it. And my overall thoughts on all of this from someone that doesn't have any super, pandemic or not, I figure if so many Australians gave up 10-15% of penalty rates year after year to gain nothing, I'm sure 0.5% out of their wage, which is money they'll see again one day, is an easy sell. You don't even need to try. It sells itself. I don't even have super and I can see the appeal. Give them their stinking 10%. And I would say reform the system, but not under this government. I wouldn't want this government to reform the system. And wow, the government wants to deregulate the banks and they want reverse mortgages to be a thing here. So here's my prediction for what the Australian government or the Treasurer or somebody is going to suggest or do. Loans that are going to go bad. We know they're going to go bad, right? But you still get them a little bit of money you can for them, but we'll go bet against them because we know they're bad. If that's not legal, make that legal. Let's go. Who wants to bet $5 that that's going to happen? Alright, I'll wrap this up here. Thanks for watching. You made it to the end. Congratulations. Have a nice day.